Good morning and welcome to the presentation of the 2014 Tobin Brothers Foundation Awards. Since its inauguration in 1984, the Foundation has made monetary donations to lesser-known not-for-profit organisations totalling more than $400,000. Today, we'd like to recognise another 12 award recipients. Many disadvantaged children and young people are simply surviving in high-density inner-city public housing estates. One organisation acutely aware of the deprivation they suffer is Citywide Ministries. Doing much to help stem the tide of these social and economic ills is Operation Stitches.
So Lee, most of us probably have never heard of Operation Stitches. In a nutshell, what's it all about? Where did it start and who is it designed to help?
Okay. Operation Stitches started with Chris and Patrick, who wanted to be able to serve the public housing children. And so they bossed them in and they had programs for them, and it just became so wide that they decided to want to have something that was where they were located in the public housing estate. So they found this place here in Richmond, which has become the community centre where the kids have association with this place as something where it's fun, where they're able to be taught good things, and through the programs we teach them things like choosing who they run with, making good life choices, daring to dream, choosing who they run with. So through the different activities that we have, we'd always have food, and we'd have lots of volunteers who come on board to be able to support what Operation Stitches is about.
Guys, what's the best thing about Operation Stitches? What do you like most about coming here?
We get to tutor younger children.
They encourage me to never give up.
What would you like to do when you finally leave here?
Um,
You have any early ambitions?
I'd like to become a doctor.
And what do you enjoy most about being here?
The kids and how Chris and Patrick make the kids grow up to be a good person.
Making good life choices!
Southeast Palliative Care is an organisation whose formation was inspired and led by local community groups passionately committed to creating a sustainable network that increases access to high-quality care for all those approaching end of life.
Southeast Palliative Care was set up to assist a lot of people who wanted to, die in the community. I know dying is a very strong word to use, but life-limiting illness is one thing that does come to mind. And it was a group of staff who came together to try and assist these people out in the community and as an extension out of Dandenong Hospital.
You're talking really about quality of life and dignity, I suppose.
Exactly. It's also giving people their choice, allowing them to feel that they had that choice to do what they wanted in those later years of their life, not to be institutionalised, so to speak.
For more than 25 years, the Arduk Foundation, winner of this year's Aubrey Moss Award, has provided education support to disadvantaged children and young people. Arduk's mission is to overcome barriers to full participation in education, to mobilise volunteers to support children in schools and early childhood centres, and to develop skills and broaden children's horizons.
I read that, for instance, your stated objectives is to overcome barriers to what you call full participation in education. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Full participation in education and removing the barriers is particularly cognizant of the fact that poverty determines educational outcomes in Australia. In Australia, we have children who don't get to have breakfast, may not have lunch, may not have socks and undies, certainly may not have the stationery materials to get to school, that not every child is able to have support doing homework and to develop and have the best start in life. And particularly in those very early years, disadvantage can mean that children start behind the 8 ball before they even get to school.
Down Syndrome Victoria is the statewide peak membership organisation representing people with Down syndrome and their families. DSV provides support, encouragement, information and resources not only to those with Down syndrome but also to the broader community.
Ian Cook, one of the most important programs obviously for Down Syndrome Victoria is your program called Choosing a School. Tell us something about that. How does that work?
Well, choosing a school is really an information and a consultancy session for parents prior to their child transitioning into the foundation year of primary school. And what we do cover in the session is really we talk about the three systems of education in Victoria: Catholic, state, independent, funding considerations, which parents are quite often very interested in, and probably the big 6 questions that we go through are those related to location, the travel, family considerations, siblings all at one school, cost is sometimes a factor, religion is a factor in some families, and before and after school care.
But generally speaking, this must relieve an awful lot of anxiety for parents.
Oh, anxiety, I think. Anxiety and fear, they are the 2 biggest factors, whether they will say it to you or not. And quite often they'll say, well, what do you think? And I'll say, well, these are the questions. These are the things for you to find out. The decision is yours.
When the medical profession is unable to do anything more for someone who's terminally ill, that person will invariably become a patient of a palliative care establishment. But thanks to the Peninsula Home Hospice, residents within the Mornington Peninsula Shire, City of Frankston and parts of the City of Kingston are now able to access palliative care in the home.
Look, our principal aim is to recognise that when people have reached a phase of their life where their illness is no longer curable, there are options to focus on quality of life. And when you ask people about quality of life, very often what they want to do is to spend more time at home with the people that they love. A community palliative care service aims to achieve just that. So we look after people in their own home, surrounded by their family and their loved ones, up until the time that they die, or if they choose not to die at home, so we can facilitate an admission into an inpatient facility when the time comes.
One of the things that interested me when reading the brochure on your organisation was that the Peninsula Home Hospice is doing much more than caring for the patient's medical needs. You're doing much more than that.
Yes, we recognise that the medical needs need to be addressed, and clearly symptom management when people are unwell is a very key component. However, it's not the only component when you're looking at quality of life. Knowing how the family are coping is a very big part of palliative care. Knowing how the person that's dying is dealing with their illness, where they are from a psychological point of view, what's important to them from a spiritual perspective, and what the practical things are that will make it possible for them to be able to be at home.
An engaged community helping young people to succeed. That's the mission of the School Volunteer Program. The SVP believes that for children to thrive, they need to be connected to and supported by an extended network of caring people with time to listen and provide guidance.
What kind of skills are being taught through the program?
So our main area of need in schools is literacy support. So most of our volunteers would help with reading, writing, general communication, comprehension in the classroom. We do a lot of work in the numeracy support, so mathematics. We have science clubs, kitchen garden programs. There's people helping out in the library. So it really depends on the needs that the schools identify and the needs of the specific students.
It sounds like a very comprehensive program.
It's very, very simple. It is comprehensive, but it just makes sense. You've got all this wealth and wisdom sitting out there in the community of retirees, and yet you've got this great need for young people in schools who potentially would otherwise fall through the gap. It's a huge boost for young people in the community and for our organisation.
With people like the Time Help volunteers, it really is a beautiful world. And I'd like to say a big thank you on behalf of all the young kids in Australia for making our community a better place to be.
Yeah, this is as good as it gets.
When a parent convicted of a crime is sent to prison, the negative impact on children can be quite monumental. Prior to 1982, these children were in a sense the hidden victims of the crimes for which a parent had been imprisoned. But with the establishment in 3 states of the Shine for Kids cooperative, that's no longer the case.
Michael, Shine for Kids has been in existence for some 30 years now. It's operating together in 3 states. What was its primary purpose when it was first established?
Well, the primary purpose is to support the children of prisoners. They're a vulnerable, marginalised group who in the past have been recognised as hidden victims of the criminal justice system. They're secondary victims, they're collateral damage, but they're often invisible. And you don't often consider the needs of children of prisoners when you see the front page of a newspaper or the 6 o'clock news that shows an offender who's committed a crime and gone to jail for a period of time. All the focus is on the offender parent or the offender person, and there's no consideration to whether they're a parent, whether they have children, and how are the children feeling, and what will their ongoing needs be.
The Victorian Deaf Society, VicDeaf, is a progressive community service organisation. It has a long and very impressive history of serving people who are deaf and hard of hearing in Victoria.
Let's talk about the reason you applied for a Tobin Brothers Foundation Award, which concerns a large number of Victorian families who, of course, must rely upon an Auslan interpreter in order to participate in a funeral service. How great is the need for that service?
A large number of the community we work with use Auslan interpreters. Auslan is Australian Sign Language. It's the national language that Australian deaf people use. If they want to have access to information or services, they will access that via an interpreter. In particular, in times of great need, or if a close family member has passed on and they need that integral communication within their close circle of support. And that can be when they have great barriers of access to communication. And VicDeaf over many years have provided Auslan interpreters for those moments when their close loved ones and family members have passed on. They're moments of grief, are very important in the deaf person's life. If we're able to support them to make sure they can feel included within their family or their community during those times of loss.
When a family member is diagnosed with cancer, not only is a great deal of emotional support needed, but where the major source of income is threatened, financial pressures can compound what is already a very stressful situation. It's for those reasons the Cancer Support for Families Foundation was established to provide a helping hand for those most in need.
Brett, perhaps begin by telling us, if you can, something about the ways in which caring for a loved one suffering from cancer can have a negative impact on the family.
That's right. Cancer Support for Families will help families, I guess, that have been caught up in that financial fight against cancer, where, look, a lot of money has been, over the years, has been sent through to research avenues in fighting cancer and curing cancer. What we focus on is that financial part of the fight against the disease. And it's been worked out through a few studies over the years that the average cost of fighting a cancer diagnosis is $55,000. For people diagnosed under the age of 30, that could skyrocket up to $300 or plus. Those figures are worked out through loss of income, second mortgages, costs of bills, those sort of things that mount up over the years, and then obviously the rising cost of fighting the disease through medical advances as well.
You were saying earlier, though, that what concerns your organisation is the number of people who are, maybe for reasons of pride, reluctant to put up their hand and say, look, I need some help.
Yeah, that's right. We know that over 125,000 Australians were diagnosed with cancer last year. We know that a vast majority of those people can't afford to fight cancer. One of the biggest issues we've had, which is, I guess, a real byproduct of that Australian pride and unity, is people actually putting their hand up and asking for help. We know it's expensive, we know it's tough, and we as a charity would always love families or friends to come to us and ask for a handout, because that's what we're there for.
The major mission of the St John the Merciful Foundation is to provide relief from poverty, sickness, distress and destitution being suffered by women, youth, the aged and their families. Stefan Teleski says the Tobin Brothers Foundation Award will greatly assist the Foundation's mentoring and tutoring sessions for 29 disadvantaged primary and secondary students who will receive a lot of help from volunteer tertiary students in VCE mathematics, biology and English. The Fight Cancer Foundation last year celebrated 25 years of giving hope and saving the lives of cancer patients around Australia and overseas. It did this by providing services to cancer patients and their families and supporting cancer research programs. While appearances aren't the be-all and end-all, it's very true that looking good and feeling the part can do wonders for your confidence and self-esteem, especially when going for that all-important job interview. For many men and women, entering or returning to the workforce can be a difficult challenge. In many cases, job applicants don't even possess appropriate clothes to wear to the interview. But thanks to a charitable organisation called Wear for Success, now they do.
Peter, begin, if you will, by telling us something about the vision of Wear for Success.
Wear for Success exists for people who are suffering disadvantage, particularly severe financial hardship. And unfortunately, with unemployment rates in Australia having just hit a 12-year high, the demand for people who really are struggling to raise enough money simply to dress themselves and prepare themselves for a job interview is intensifying and growing. All of the people who come to us are referred to us by employment agencies, job service agencies or disability employment services. So they're all genuinely unemployed. They must be registered with the CES. And all of the people we see suffer the same issue, and that is they may have a job interview tomorrow or next week, and that alone is an achievement for them, but they might also be walking around in a tracksuit and they have no money to go and buy a suit, and they may not even really know how to prepare themselves and look the part for an interview. That's where we come in, and of course it's all free.
That presentation, of course, is so vitally important, isn't it, the job interview situation?
We look at research from various places, including UCLA and California, which indicates that really about 10% of what you say in an interview is what influences the person interviewing you. It is very much about your appearance when you walk in the door. It's very much about how you sit, how you present yourself, how confident you are, whether you can maintain eye contact. But if you walk in dressed inappropriately, you're probably out of the running before you even start.
So to have access and have this type of support from Tobin Brothers will make a definite difference in our ability to provide this type of service during sensitive moments in a deaf person's life.
So the Tobin Brothers Foundation is actually funding the support of our Talking the Talk program.
It's an amazing grant. It's something that we really needed. It's going to help us set up some ongoing fundraising opportunities. We'll be using that money, part of the money, to help a family in need, but more importantly set up a fundraising opportunity ongoing where we can fund more and more families.
We want to be able to take the Buddies program, which we've done as a pilot project last season, to another level, to be able to provide funding for a coordinator, to be able to run the program, to be able to get resource material.
Look, the grant that we've received has enabled us to set up a new counselling room. The counselling room is available then for families in their own homes, and we have a music therapist, art therapist and counsellors that use this room to bring families in to us to give them a little bit of a break from home and to do something therapeutic.
The grant from the Tobin Brothers Foundation is a really big boost for us. It'll enable us to recruit at least 15 to 20 volunteers in an area of need in Moreland, sort of Glenroy, Brunswick, Pascoe Vale, and those volunteers will provide 2,000 hours of support to young people who may otherwise fall through the cracks.
Well, the Tobin Brothers Award is fantastic because it'll greatly contribute to the work we do in Victoria, operating our prison in visits.
But these additional grants do help us to take that extra step to provide that additional level of care.
Nobody actually funds what we do here in preparing the parents for school, so that's the direct impact of Tobin Brothers.
One of the challenges that a lot of people who are suffering severe financial duress because of unemployment have is transport and getting around the city. That is where the Tobin Brothers funding will help us, and it's not so much helping us, it's actually helping the unemployed people.